Rock types are usually incredibly strong with great defense, albeit normally pretty bad on the specially defensive side, not to mention the awful speed. So will a few rocks be enough to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke where any Pokemon that faints is boxed forever? Well, the first real issue in this run is that the first rock type we can get is right before the second gym. But it so happens that our mother very conveniently has a Rhyhorn that I'm gonna steal since it's the first rock type we'd be able to run into anyway. Now Rhyhorn's a pretty good Pokemon, except for the fact that it's got a glaring quad weakness to both water and grass, which is gonna lead to some hiccups in the early game. And the most immediate of these hiccups is the fact that Viola's Surskit has Bubble. For this reason, I was pretty certain that this run would be completely impossible, but that was until Surskit went for Quick Attack. I really have no idea what the AI is going for here, but at least it gives me a free stomp doing a bit more than half damage. Now, while I was pretty certain I could survive one bubble, the fact that it goes for Water Sport here is completely baffling, and it gets us the free kill on Surskit with full health as we go against Vivillon. It immediately goes for a Harden to boost up its bulk as I hit it with a Stomp, which only does 25% after the defense boost. I then consider myself really lucky that it went for Tackle instead of Infestation, which would have started doing residual damage over time, but at least we got one free turn. After it goes for Infestation, I can get Vivillon down to 25% with Stomp, and as you can see, Infestation is doing quite a bit of damage every single turn. Pair that with Viola healing over half her health back with a potion, and we could be in some trouble here. Luckily, Viola hits me with a Tackle next, doing only 2 points of damage as I can get it down into the red with a Horn Attack. Now at just 18 HP, another Infestation takes me down to 11 as a final Horn Attack seals the deal, granting us the first gym badge. And if somebody's got a theory why Surskit never went for Bubble, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Now the next big early game obstacle in our way is the guy who's trying to become our stepdad, Professor Sycamore. And this guy's got both of our worst nightmares, a grass and water type on his team in Bulbasaur and Squirtle. It's safe to say that I need to make a few preparations, the first of which being to pick up the Bulldoze and Swords Dance TMs, both of which Rhyhorn can use at the Poke Center in Lumiose. The second way I can prepare for this fight is actually a lot more impactful, since the difference between the level cap between Gym 1 and Gym 2 in this game is a whopping 13 levels. I decide to fairly liberally get Rhyhorn up to level 21. I do this so that we can easily outspeed and one-shot all of Sycamore's Pokemon with a Stomp. Besides the fact that this is a good way to prepare him to be a stepdad, it's also necessary since we really don't want to take any chances this early in the run. Snorlax opened its eyes wide. It's fine, Snorlax can't do that. Arriving in Ambert Town, we can pick up the handy TM for Rock Smash, which we immediately put to use in Glittering Cave, and thus we can find the second encounter of the run, Dwebble. And Dwebble is a fantastic Pokemon. Not only does it have the epic Sturdy ability, it's also a bug type, which neutralizes its fighting weakness. On top of that, it gets Shell Smash later on if we can keep it alive long enough. But the best part about Glittering Cave is that we can get ourselves a Jaw Fossil. And upon giving it to this scientist, we can have our very own T-Rex. Now, aside from the fact that my Tyrant has the worst possible modest nature, and the fact that T-Rexes gave me a crippling fear of sitting on the toilet as a child, Tyrantrum is nevertheless in my top 5 favorite Pokemon of all time because it is just that awesome. I'll tell you what isn't awesome though is the amount of time that I had to spend smashing rocks just to find a Binacle. I seriously spent the better part of 40 minutes looking for this thing, and what even is this thing? Seriously, if we're up to me, this thing would go straight to hell. Anyway, Tough Claws is actually a pretty awesome ability, and later on, this thing could also get Shell Smash. With all the possible preparations out of the way, it's time to take on Gym Leader Grant in a Rock-type mirror match. Now, Grant is a man of culture. Apart from being into climbing, he also likes fossil Pokemon. The first one he sends into battle is a Mora, and we can hit it with a quad-effective Rock Smash to do more than half damage as he paralyzes us with Thunder Wave. This means he can outspeed the next turn with a Refrigerate-boosted takedown, bringing us down to just 16 HP and activating my Oranberry. I fortunately then don't get paralyzed, and I can take out the Amora with another Rock Smash. This leaves Grant with his own Tyrant, and I figure I can take one hit, so I decide to try and get off a Charm, but between Paralysis and Flinch, that definitely doesn't happen. Being paralyzed and at just 4 HP, we definitely gotta switch Tyrant out into Rhyhorn, who can easily tank a bite on the switch-in. Another bite takes me down to just above half and ends up flinching me. I really can't take too many more of these bites, but fortunately I don't flinch again as I end up on 22 HP, taking Tyrant into the red, but also lowering its speed. This promises prompts Grant to use a super potion, getting Tyrant back to full health, and we can take it down into the red again with another bulldoze. But since it's now at -2 speed, we can easily outspeed the next turn and take it out with another one. The next big threat is Geosenge Karina, who does have fighting moves on both of her Lucarios. That paired with the fact that she can easily boost her attack up with Swords Dance makes this a very dangerous fight in the early game. And so to counter her, I figure we need to fight fire with fire. Or rather in this case, Swords Dance with Swords Dance. Even though her power-up punch boosted her attack, I know I definitely can take another one, but she just decides to go for Metal Sound to lower my special defense despite not having any special attacks. Even though my Bulldoze lowered Lucario's speed, it's still much faster than Dwebble and can do a bit of damage with Feint, which gets a critical hit, but still does barely anything as I can take it out with a Bulldoze. The second Lucario comes in and decides to be even more threatening by going for a Swords Dance right away, boosting it up to +2 as I take it down into the red with a Bulldoze, and she could have done some massive damage here, possibly even taking out Dwebble if she went for Power-Up Punch, but she instead just goes for Feint, completely throwing, allowing me to take out Lucario with Bulldoze. If Karina would have just gone for Power-Up Punch every single turn, I'm pretty sure we would have lost a few Pokemon here. This leads us to Reflection Cave, and while I was dodging the most dangerous trainer in Kalos, I end up running into my next encounter, a Roggenrola. And while it's great that it's got sturdy, has nobody noticed that this thing's just a giant butthole? Anyway, we can evolve it right away into a Boldore. This leads us to our first consequential rival fight, and Serena's first Pokemon is a Meowstic, which we can easily take care of with a couple of bites from Tyrant. She then sends in her Absol, which is a little problematic at this low health, so I swap out for Boldore. However, she just ends up going for Quick Attack on the switch, which Tyrant could have definitely tanked and gone for something like a Rock Tomb before swapping out. The next turn, after taking nothing again from another Quick Attack, I go for an Iron Defense to get myself as bulky as possible, and of course Absol gets a critical hit slash the next turn as I lower its speed with a Rock Tomb. Now Boldore being slow as a boulder, Absol of course outspeeds anyway, going for a bite which unfortunately takes us below half as we can take it out with another Rock Tomb. Enter Quilladin. Because of Iron Defense, I know I can take a non-crit Needle Arm, but of course it ends up flinching me, so I have to swap out into Dwebble since I'm at 10 HP. I end up just getting hit by a bite on the switch, which doesn't do too much, and I learn the next turn that I'm actually faster to my surprise, setting up to +2 with a Swords Dance as the Quilladin just goes for another bite. Since I'm faster, I can now just go for a +2 super effective Needle Arm, taking out the Quilladin and dealing with Serena. Now at this point in the run, we have to act with insane caution, since the next couple gym leaders being both Karina and the Buttman means that we've got ample opportunity to lose our entire team. And for that exact reason, we're gonna need a carefully executed strategy. What makes Karina particularly difficult to deal with is that all her Pokemon have Power-Up Punch since it's her signature move. This means that doing something like setting up against her is gonna be insanely difficult, so what I ended up doing instead is going for Charm, which lowers Mienfu's attack by 2 as it then goes for Power-Up Punch, powering itself up again. This is a very 2-step forward, 1-step back process, netting me effectively a Growl every single turn, and on top of that, I can only ever get it down to -5. Once I had gotten it down to -5, however, I swap out into Dwebble, who gets hit by another Power-Up Punch on the switch, getting Mienfu back to -4. It definitely helps that fighting is neutral versus Dwebble as we set up to +2 with Swords Dance, and Mienfu gets itself back up to -3. After another couple Swords Dances, the Mienfu is still in the negatives at -1 attack. However, because Dwebble is so slow, I decide to set up a Rock Polish to boost my speed as the Mienfu goes for another Power-Up Punch, getting to neutral attack. Now that it's gotten to attack me 5 times, it finally activates my Oranberry, getting me to 52 health before I go for another Rock Polish to be able to outspeed the Hawlucha in the back. Because both Rock and Bug are resisted by fighting, I decided to teach Dwebble the newly purchased Poison Jab to be able to one-shot the Mienfu. Second out is Machoke, and being at +4 speed, we can easily outspeed it, taking it out with a +6 Poison Jab. This just leaves Hawlucha, and because we're at +4, we can outspeed, but unfortunately, it hung on what must be 1 HP. However, Dwebble being an absolute unit, manages to tank the incoming Flying Press with just 10, and a second Poison Jab gets a higher roll, managing to take out the Hawlucha, claiming us the 3rd gym badge. I see, you finally obtained everything you need for Mega Evolution. Yeah, everything except a Pokemon to Mega Evolve? Mega Binacle, get out of here! Now, it may not be Mega Evolution, but regular evolution is pretty awesome in this case since we can get ourselves a Crustle. This leaves us with our next opponent, the Buttman himself, and him using Grass grass types isn't very advantageous for us, but fortunately we do have two Pokemon that take neutral damage from grass, being both Crustle and Tyrunt. Out of the two, I decided to lead with Tyrunt, who gets Leech Seeded the first turn as I go for Charm to reduce the possible damage this Jumpluff can do with Acrobatics. The following turn, I swap out into Crustle, who gets hit by said Acrobatics, which basically does no damage at all. The next turn, however, Jumpluff goes for Grass Knot, which isn't just special, it also does damage based on your weight. This means Crustle takes massive damage, but I can restore some of it back with a Citrus Berry, which means I can take another one if I need to the next turn after setting up a Swords Dance. But I don't end up needing to, since Jumpluff goes for an Acrobatics for some reason, allowing me to take it out with a Poison Jab. Weepinbell then suffers the same fate, and Go-Goat shortly thereafter, claiming us the 4th gym badge. Honestly, our opponent so far could have had so much more success by just going for their most powerful moves, but alas, Professor Sycamore told me you can now wield Mega Evolution. Well, that makes him both a liar and a motherfucker. The level cap now being at 37 allows us to evolve Boldore into Gigalith. Now, because I've got a ground type on my team, you may mistakenly think that I have a good matchup versus Clemont, but such is not quite the case since his Magneton has Mirror Shot and his Heliolisk has Grass Knot. The fact alone that those Pokemon are pretty fast makes this the most dangerous battle of the run so far. Even still, because of the fact he leads with his Emolga, I decide to lead with my ground type anyway. This blocks the Emolga from using its most powerful move, Volt Switch, and locks it into not very effective moves as I can freely go for a Rock Blast, which unfortunately doesn't quite take it out. This isn't really the end of the world, since we only have to take a bit more chip damage from the Emolga before taking it out with another Rock Blast, which is gonna bait in Heliolisk, which is actually exactly what we wanted. The Heliolisk will go for Grass Knot, so we can send in Tyrunt, who's not particularly heavy and doesn't take super effective damage. It also resists the following Thunderbolt, allowing us to go for a Bulldoze, which is gonna lower Heliolisk's speed. And with just a bit of investment into speed EVs before the fight, that speed drop is actually enough for us to outspeed the next turn and take the Heliolisk out with another Bulldoze. As awesome as that strategy was, it unfortunately doesn't quite solve the Magneton problem. So to save my Tyrunt, I immediately swap into Gigalith, who can tank one Mirror Shot, but unfortunately it's not going to outspeed the next turn, and it's just going to have to act as a sacrifice. Gigalith's sacrifice does give us a lot of value, however, since we can send in Crustle and go for a Bulldoze, which takes Magneton down to its Sturdy. I can then tank a Mirror Shot no matter what because of my own Sturdy, but I end up surviving on 14 HP. The one unfortunate thing about this is the Mirror Shot accuracy drop. So as Clemont Hyper Potions, I'm just gonna have to hope and pray that my Bug Bite followed by Bulldoze don't miss, which they fortunately don't do, granting us a victory versus the toughest gym leader so far. Now that we've beaten Clemont though, our level cap is substantially higher at 42, allowing us to evolve Binacle into Barbaracle, and of course at level 39, Tyrunt into Tyrantrum. Who's a good boy? Following this development, we have to take on the next gym leader, Valerie, who actually put up way more of a fight than I expected of her. This wasn't as much because of her competence as it was negligence and haste on my part, but I nevertheless start the fight with a Swords Dance after she sends in her non-intimidate Mawile, a very strange decision on behalf of the game developers. I mean, it's not like this fight was too difficult for this thing to have Intimidate in the first place. Regardless, we take out the Mawile with a Bulldoze, after which Mr. Mime can set up a Reflect, and this is where I kind of made the mistake. I should have possibly just set up more Swords Dances and Rock Polishes versus Mawile, because even though a +2 Poison Jab takes out Mr. Mime through Reflect, with Sylveon it's a different story, only doing about half, but we do end up getting the Poison and the Flinch because of the King's Rock that I gave Crustle. Considering Sylveon then outspeeds, meaning that we were speed tied, I ended up getting insanely lucky at the end of that fight since nothing we have really wants to switch into this thing. Have you ever wondered just how many Pokeballs are used in a single day? You know, I try to worry about the usage of my own balls, sir. And speaking of using balls, or Pokeballs, we can actually get an encounter that I completely missed before, being Nose Pass on Route 10. However, it wouldn't have been of much use to us before this stage in the game since we can at least now evolve it into Probopass. And while we're at it, we might as well evolve Rhyhorn into Rhydon. And go ahead, leave the comment, Rhydon D's what? I'll never forgive any group that tries to take all the Pokeballs for itself. That's right, you protect your balls, Mr. President. Okay, I get it, that's enough. That's definitely enough ball talk. Instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go receive this guy's rod. Wait a minute, reaching Dendemil Town is a pivotal point in the run since we can now get Shell Smash on both Crustle and Barbaracle. Our next fight is versus the gym leader Olympia, the most forgettable of them all. And while she was the easiest gym leader to beat so far, my goal wasn't to beat her senseless, but to permanently instill a fear of toilets. After receiving a fabulous pair of earrings from Olympia, Lysandre says that he's gonna eliminate anyone who isn't part of Team Flare. So after hearing that I'm gonna be brutally slaughtered by a fantasy laser, I did the natural thing and went fishing. And I went fishing specifically to find a Corsola. And considering that Game Freak intended for Corsola to be a defensive Pokemon, I would like to give it the nickname the not-so-great Barrier Reef. But fear not, we have better targets to fish for, namely Relicanth. And I'm really glad they're trying something new with Scarlet and Violet, because the Pokemon game formula is kind of like this Pokemon. It has not changed in 100 million years. It's kind of unfortunate that I got Swift Swim instead of Rockhead, but the plus attack nature is definitely a bonus.
What's going on with that outfit? Is that really you, Lysandre?
Believe it or not, that is indeed Lysandre, and somehow he managed to find a way to look even dumber than his silly-looking grunts. His third fight is by far the scariest, and while I managed to handle the others with ease, this is where the run really took a dive. The first turn, Mienshao goes for a Swords Dance as I myself decide to set up as well, going for a Shell Smash to boost my attack and speed. And since my Sturdy's intact, I decided to just go for another Shell Smash to maximize the amount of attack that I can get before being taken down to 1 HP by a high jump kick. I can then go for a Bulldoze, which at this point is more than powerful enough to take out the Mienshao. Lysandre's second Pokemon is Honchkrow, but since it doesn't have Sucker Punch, I can freely go for Rock Slide, taking it out in one hit. Third out is Pyroar, and since it's also weak to Rock, all I have to do is... excuse me, what? Oh my goodness, I don't think you can imagine how much I was kicking myself in this moment for not just clicking Bulldoze, which I clearly had in my moveset instead of Rock Slide. Having both Shell Smash and Sturdy, Crustle was by far the best Pokemon on my team, and losing it to Lysandre like this before the Elite Four is a huge blow. Being able to take out the Pyroar with a couple of Mirror Coats from Corsola is little compensation, especially since what follows from there is just Gyarados Mega Evolving and now not being weak to Rock anymore, which is kind of bad for our team, and then KOing Corsola with an Aqua Tail. This situation is what the experts would call bad, or at least that's what I thought, until the Gyarados missed an Aqua Tail, allowing me to go for a Bulldoze, lowering its speed one stage. This lets me follow up with a Hammer Arm, which isn't quite enough to take it out, lowering my own speed before I fall to the following Aqua Tail. Guess I didn't take too good care of my mom's Rhyhorn, but at least it gives me an opportunity to freely swap in my T-Rex and take out the Gyarados with an Earthquake since I outspeed because of Bulldoze. Ah, there goes half my team and my best Mon. It's safe to say that I need some new team members, and now that we can go to Route 18, I can find a Graveler. And it's actually a massive detriment to the run that I get Rockhead instead of Sturdy, but at least I can instantly evolve it into a Golem. It's also of some consolation that I can immediately thereafter go to Terminus Cave, where I can find myself my next encounter, Pupitar. And while Pupitar isn't a great Pokemon in and of itself, since the level cap is 59, we can also immediately evolve it into Tyranitar. And having both a specially defensive nature and the ability to boost the special defense of all our rock types with Sandstream is pretty amazing. You know what time it is. The time has come to face the final gym leader, Wulfric, and his ice types, which we do actually have the type advantage against. I go ahead and lead with Tyranitar, which is going to set up the sand, but unfortunately that's going to get blocked right away since Abomasnow is slower to set up the snow. For Abomasnow itself, that fact doesn't really matter since we're just going to destroy it right away with a quad-effective Fire Fang. It starts to get interesting when he sends in his Cryogonal, which immediately goes for Confuse Ray, which I of course prepared for by equipping Tyranitar with a Persim Berry. This then allows me to freely retaliate with a Rock Slide, taking it out in one hit. Since the gym leaders in Kalos only have 3 Pokemon each, this only leaves his final Pokemon, Avalugg, so I immediately swap out into Probopass, who takes an Avalanche very well. Now Avalugg has massive defense, but its special defense is super bad, allowing Probopass to take it down into the red as it sets up a curse. This of course leads Wulfric to use a Full Restore, but since we're just gonna outspeed the next turn, this effectively just wins us the fight. Definitely not as much of a pushover as Olympia, but still required a bit of strategy to get through cleanly. Having all 8 badges of course allows us to progress through Victory Road and get to the Pokemon League. From there, I had to decide on the final builds for the Pokemon on my team. First off, we've got the Handyman with Razor Shell, Stone Edge, Bulldoze, and Shell Smash. Second is Golem, the master of rock and rolling with Power Up Punch, Rock Tomb, Earthquake, and Stealth Rock. We then have the master of even flow, at least when it comes to the flow of nasal mucus, with Power Gem, Wikstrom, Dazzling Gleam, Earth Power, and Thunderbolt. Fourth out is a fish so old it probably would be grateful to be dead with Waterfall, Head Smash, Yawn, and Rock Tomb. Tyrantrum, the master of eating well on the can with Earthquake, Head Smash, Crunch, and Charm. Last to walk this way is Tyranitar with Earthquake, Crunch, Power-Up Punch, and Rock Slide, which I wish was 100% accurate because I don't want to miss a thing. Now the Kalos Elite Four is particularly tricky for rock types since we have both steel and water to face, which means it's a lot easier to start in the end that we're effective against. Malva can normally be a pretty tricky Elite Four member to face, both with Noble Roar on her Pyroar and the fact that her Chandelure just hits like a truck paired with the speed of Talonflame. However, even though Wild Charge is super effective against Barbaracle, it's got enough hands to handle another one even the turn after we drop our defense from Shell Smash. In fact, we're able to go for yet another Shell Smash the next turn and still survive a Wild Charge, except it goes for a Noble Roar instead, leaving us an only +3 attack, which is still going to be adequate. From there, a Razor Shell is enough to take out the Pyroar and a Stone Edge to take out the Torkoal. Chandelure also gets one-shot by a Razor Shell, but I end up activating its Flame Body, which means my attack is now halved. Even still, I don't end up missing the quad-effective Stone Edge, which easily handles the Talonflame anyway, winning us the first Elite Four fight. The second member I decide to go up against is the one that I have a neutral matchup versus, Drasna with her dragon types. Leading out with Dragalge, this gives me a perfect opportunity to send in Tyranitar to set up the Sandstorm to boost my special defense. From there, I outspeed and hit the Dragalge with an Earthquake, taking it down into the red as it does about 20% to me with a Surf. Drasna then predictably goes for a full restore, so I decide to just go for a Power-Up Punch here to guarantee that I take it out with the next one, but I decide to get just a little bit greedier than that, going for a second Power-Up Punch to boost my attack again, which ends up being a huge mistake since it poisons me with Poison Point. Now, while I can still take out the Dragalge with an Earthquake this turn, the poison does mean that I'm not going to be able to sweep with Tyranitar. It does not, however, stop me from taking out the Druddigon with one hit using Rock Slide. After that, though, the poison damage does leave me in the red as Drasna sends in Altaria, so it's definitely time to swap out, leading me to send in the incredibly specially defensive Probopass as she hits me with a not very effective Moonblast, which does barely anything despite being a critical hit. Drasna's next mistake is going for Cotton Guard since I am a specially attacking Pokemon, going for a Power Gem, and another one would be enough to take it out, but unfortunately I get hit by a Sing and stay asleep. This isn't really a massive problem since their only attacking moves are Moonblast and Dragon Pulse, both of which I resist, but I do end up getting the first turn Wake Up, taking it out with another Power Gem. This just leaves her with her last Pokemon Noivern, which does have Flamethrower, so I end up swapping out into my Relicanth, who can resist it. I'm then gonna have to tank a Dragon Pulse the next turn, but after that, I have just enough health to be able to one-shot the Noivern with a Head Smash and still survive the recoil since I unfortunately don't have Rock Head. This means that all of our better Elite Four matchups are now out of the way, and we have to take on the Steel-type user Wikstrom. This is where things start to get a lot more difficult. The only saving grace here is that Wikstrom starts out with Klefki, which is fairly easy to do a bit of setup against. It won't do too much damage if it goes for Flash Cannon because of our Sandstorm and special defense boosting nature, but most likely it's just going to go for Spikes, allowing me to set up a Power-Up Punch. I then annoyingly get hit by a Torment before I can hit it with a second Power-Up Punch, boosting me to +2. And Torment is the entire reason that I taught Tyranitar Protect, so that I can just use another Power-Up Punch the next turn, boosting me to +3 as I then get hit by a Flash Cannon for the first damage against Tyranitar. Knowing what happened when I got greedy versus Drasna, I decided to just take it out with an Earthquake and be satisfied with +3 as he then sends in Aegislash, which I can easily just take out with a Crunch now that I'm at +3. Probopass is next, and it's mostly going to be a huge nuisance because of Sturdy, since I can take it down to 1 HP with a quad effective Earthquake as it then hits me with a Flash Cannon. And while this is annoying, it isn't actually too bad since at least it wastes Wikstrom's full restore and allows me to get another boost as I go for another Power-Up Punch. This makes Wikstrom waste his final full restore on Probopass, which means he can't heal up Scizor, which is by far going to be the most annoying Pokemon on his team. And wasting those full restores is a lot more important than gaining boost with Power-Up Punch, which I'm mostly just doing because I have to use different moves due to Torment, since I'm not sure whether or not 79 HP is going to be enough for Tyranitar to tank a Bullet Punch. To get around that, however, we can easily swap into our Water-type Relicanth as we then get hit by an X-Scissor the next turn and can get off a Yawn. Another X-Scissor hits us deep into the yellow as I try to go for a Rock Tomb, but unfortunately miss, but at least the Scizor falls asleep, affording us a free turn to swap out into Tyrantrum. I go for a Charm to lower Scizor's attack, attack since we're still very weak to both Iron Head and Bullet Punch, as it just stays asleep, which allows me to go for another charm, putting it at -4, but this time it does wake up, hitting me with an Iron Head that doesn't do very much damage. I then go for Crunch, but because Scizor has such massive defenses, it's a 3-hit KO as I get hit by another Iron Head. While my second Crunch gets a defense drop, the second Iron Head takes me down so low that I'm unsure whether or not I can survive a Bullet Punch, leaving me to swap out into Golem. The Iron Head on the switch doesn't end up doing too much damage, and even though the Scizor outspeeds and could flinch me, I do end up breaking through, taking it out with an Earthquake. This leaves us with just one Elite Four member left, and oh boy was it bad. You see, Elite Four member Wikstrom is a master of the water type, which is possibly the worst matchup for rock types in the entire game. Water types are some of the most statistically diverse, and even his lead Pokemon Clawitzer gave me massive trouble. Relicanth ends up just barely surviving an Aurasphere and healing up a bit with a Citrus Berry before I can go for a Yawn. I then swap into Probopass, even though it's quad effective to the Aurasphere I know is incoming. What it does have, however, is Sturdy, which is going to allow it to survive on 1 HP no matter what, which guarantees me to get this Clawitzer to go to sleep. The only real problem with this is that Clawitzer is a fairly bulky Pokemon, so I'm not going to be able to one-shot it with a Thunderbolt. Very fortunately for my Probopass, however, it does stay asleep the next turn, allowing me to take it out, which is 1 out of 4 problems dealt with. Siebold's second Pokemon is Gyarados, one of the best Pokemon of all time, and as you can expect, I don't have anything to swap into either Aqua Tail or Earthquake, so I have to allow my Probopass to go down. This at least allows me to safely switch in Tyranitar, who's going to take a little bit over half from a Waterfall and can then retaliate with a Stone Edge, which will be enough to take out the Gyarados. But Siebold still has half of his team left, and his next Pokemon is a handyman of his own. I really can't let Barbaracle take out Tyranitar with a Cross Chop here, so I send in Relicanth as fodder, but it does end up surviving, which just leads it to get taken out the following turn. I then send in Tyrantrum, but because I can't one-shot this thing with an Earthquake, I go for a Charm first to lower its attack as it hits me with a Cross Chop. I then go for the Earthquake, taking the Barbaracle down below half as it hits me with a Cross Chop, taking me below half as well. The next turn, another Earthquake is enough to seal the deal, taking out Barbaracle, leaving Siebold only with Starmie. If I stay in with my Dragon type here, I'll obviously get destroyed by a Dazzling Gleam, so I swap in my Golem, who doesn't get hit too hard. That doesn't last very long, however, since Starmie's incredibly fast, and I obviously cannot tank a quad-effective Surf. I then send in the misspelled Doobie Brothers, who after tanking a Psychic can set up a Shell Smash to try and seal our victory. The boosts then allow me to outspeed the Starmie and I don't end up missing the Stone Edge, which means that even though we lost half of our team versus Siebold, we can say that this run made it all the way to the champion. Now, the fact that we've lost half of our team is substantial, but at least we have the most important players left. I lead with Barbaracle, and a really important detail is that Hawlucha has Flying Press and not High Jump Kick, which isn't super effective against Rock type since it's part Flying type. But since Hawlucha goes for Swords Dance, I get a free Shell Smash off, and I can take it out the next turn with a Stone Edge. Second out is Gourgeist, and even though this thing resists it, we can actually one-shot this thing with a Stone Edge as well, which ended up being a critical hit. Third is Goodra, and if I end up missing one of these Stone Edges, I'm gonna be in big trouble, but it doesn't happen versus Goodra. The great thing about Aurorus is we don't have to risk it, and we can just go for the 95% accurate Razor Shell instead, taking it out in one shot. Tyrantrum, however, is a problem, because even +2 Stone Edge isn't enough to take it out through its massive defense, and it one-shots the Doobie Brothers with a Head Smash, taking itself out with the Recoil. And while this just leaves Diantha with her final Pokemon, all we have are 2 Pokemon that are very weak to Fairy types. Ironically, it's Gardevoir's Trace that sets up the Sandstorm, which is going to protect us at least a little bit from Mega Gardevoir's Moonblast. It hits us for super effective damage and ends up doing just a little bit over half, but I do have a Citrus Berry taking me back just a little bit as I can hit it with a Crunch for over half damage. And it's that little Citrus Berry that ends up saving the run, as the second Moonblast isn't a critical hit, leaving me in the red and lowering my special attack before I take out Mega Gardevoir with another Crunch. And that's how I beat a Pokemon Y Hardcore Nuzlocke using only Rock types. I personally feel like Rock types are an underrated type, and it's been a privilege to show what they're capable of. Let me know what you think of Rock types down in the comments below, and perhaps tell me your favorite. As a matter of fact, what do you think, Snorlax?